Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Monday's episode of Trending, brought to you by Iconic Coffee. Head over to shop.iconic.com and use the code TRENDING for 10% off. New week, new stories. Gaz, how you feeling, mate?
Yeah, good, mate. Well, we went away for the weekend, didn't we? We had a bit of a Jolly Boys outing in North Wales with our dad.
With some bread and circuses, and it was
some
lovely.
bread and circuses. It was great. And this story broke while we were away. Virginia Giuffre, Prince Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein accuser dies. Virginia Giuffre, who accused Prince Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein of sexual abuse, has died by suicide.
Apparently, yeah.
Age 41, her family has said. Ms. Giuffre was one of the most outspoken accusers of convicted sex offenders Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, his former girlfriend. She alleged they trafficked her to the Duke of York when she was 17, which Prince Andrew has strenuously denied, despite paying her off millions of pounds. Relatives said in a statement on Friday that she'd been a fierce warrior in the fight against sexual abuse and that the toll of abuse became unbearable. She lost her life to suicide after being a lifelong victim of sexual abuse and sexual trafficking, they said. Of course, very, very sad. None of it really adds up, though. Obviously, she'd previously put out statements on social media saying that she wasn't suicidal.
Yeah, she had done, yeah.
And that if, anything was to happen to her, that, don't believe them if they say I've taken my own life. So you can read into that something, of course. Lots of people are asking questions about it, especially after Epstein, because Epstein clearly didn't kill himself now. Whether Epstein's dead or whether he's sunning it on a beach in Netanya is another question, but he certainly didn't kill himself. Then you add in the accident.
Yeah.
We spoke about it for a while. Obviously, a few weeks back, she was involved in a road traffic accident. She put up a picture of herself in hospital covered in bruises, saying that she'd been given 4 days to live. It didn't really make any sense. The local authorities came out and said that, well, we have no recollection of an accident. Then the driver of the school bus that supposedly hit her car, he came out and gave his account and showed basically some little fragments of tail light, saying, well, that's all that happened. It was like literally just clipped. And I went and spoke to the driver, who was a woman in her late 70s, which obviously isn't Virginia Giuffre then, but Virginia was apparently on the back seat and didn't really say anything, and it was her carer driving it. It all seems
It does seem weird, yeah.
Strange. Having said that, obviously I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know what happened in terms of whether she took her own life or whether she didn't. I think there's a lot of questions to be asked, but I don't have the answer to it. And of course, just because she made a statement saying that she wasn't suicidal previously, things change.
They do.
Of course, in the time between,
How long ago was that statement?
It's a couple of years ago, I think.
Fair while then.
She's become obviously estranged from her. Her and her husband are going through a divorce. Her children have moved away. They apparently have no communication with her. I can't imagine what that must be like. There's also a court case, apparently, as well, because she broke some court order surrounding that, seeing the family. And it's quite strange. So I can understand then saying that maybe, she might not have been in a great place mentally. You would hope there was someone keeping their eye on her. But another part of it for me that I think is potentially significant, if she did take her own life, is the nonsense with the Epstein files. Because there is a hopium within the MAGA movement, of course there is, and it's a hell of a drug. But there's also a hopium among other people in terms of, I hope they release these Epstein files. Now, I've got no skin in the game. I'm not a victim of Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell or Bill Clinton or any of these wrong-uns. But I'm invested in the sense that I want to know, I want the truth to come out, and I want those guilty to be held accountable. So you can only imagine what Virginia Giuffre must have been feeling in terms of her investment in the truth coming out and holding these people to account, these people that have abused her and others. So the fact that it was such a nothing burger and a blatant lie that that Pam Boddy was going to release these files, does that play into it? Where you go, do you know what? I've lost my family. I've got this whole court thing going on. And now the truth about the Epstein files that I've probably invested so much hope in happening is clearly a load of nonsense, and it's never going to happen. It's just going to be another whitewash. Is that enough to go, do you know what? What's the point?
Yeah, quite possibly, because quite often you read about people that have been through forms of abuse as children, particularly women. They then struggle to ever get past that, understandably, and struggle to end up having marriages and families and things like that. They tend to end up in a lot of very unpleasant situations over the years. Yeah, for her, she kind of, in theory, we don't know, her husband could have been a complete, not very nice bloke as well, but in theory, had kind of turned her life and managed to put that behind her, had a family, moved to Australia, set up again, while still being outspoken, while still campaigning, while still trying to get justice and putting Andrew on the back foot, to then lose all of that, like you say, for whatever reason. We can only conjecture what that reasons could be. And then have that hope destroyed. Yeah. You can see why your psychological state would be one of much, and also after she put that video out, that image out a few weeks ago, there was a lot of abuse again then as well. And there was a lot of questions, understandably so, because none of it adds up. None of it makes any sense whatsoever at all.
With that accident, it makes no sense.
No, it doesn't. It's very strange.
Well, it's like either they're lying and there was a horrendous accident, which, left her fighting for life.
Why is she suicided then?
Yeah, or she's lying, in which case, okay, so why are you in hospital and how did you get the injuries then if it isn't this accident? It's very strange. And then obviously for this to happen, it's also no surprise really.
No.
And I can understand why, other victims, other people that have spoken out, and I've seen a few people vocalizing this on social media, are worried. They're frightened.
Yeah, and that's understandable. But I think what's very important here, which we need to consider, is things like this happen and they make the news, they're in the press for a couple of days. People go, hang on, that doesn't add up, and they get on with their lives.
Yeah,
and it just gets completely forgotten about. And if there is anything untoward that's happened, if there is anything that we need to ask questions about, they generally don't get asked. People like us will ask them, but the general public will have seen this on BBC One, they'll have seen this at the 6 o'clock news yesterday, today maybe tomorrow, as a couple of other bits might come out about what's happened, then that's it. And unless you keep looking and keep asking the questions of, well, did anyone actually answer that question that I was asking about why that happened? Because invariably you can look back at so many things over the years, dodgy people, dodgy sort of happenings, people go missing, people being suicided, people, getting found in certain places, corruption scandals and all that. And you look back and go, actually, a lot of the questions that were asked at the time weren't ever actually answered. No. They were just kind of swept under the carpet, and hopefully people move on and talk about something else tomorrow. So that's very important.
There's another huge news story happens, and obviously with this one, you had the person driving through a crowd of people in Vancouver at a festival, killing a lot of people. Suddenly, Virginia Giuffre is not the lead story anymore. No. So it's one of them as well, especially when you have something emotive like this, like a potential suicide or a killing. Let's have it right. That's another potential of a young woman, a mother, and stuff like that. Is when you start to ask questions, people go, "Oh, have some respect. This is someone's lost their lives. Not everything's a conspiracy." And it's like, no, not everything is a conspiracy. Of course not. But how do you know unless you ask questions?
Exactly.
So you ask questions, and if it shows itself to be true, then it shows itself to be true. And if it shows itself to be a lie and a conspiracy, then you'll know, won't you?
Exactly. And a simple way to answer those people back is, if it was one of your loved ones and it was an open and shut case and they ignored all the potential other reasons that could have caused it, would you want people to shut up? No, you wouldn't. You'd want to keep asking questions till you got to the bottom of what happened to the person that you love. And that's all we're doing. And that, for me, is the ultimate sign of respect, not accepting of an official story because it's just easier. Yeah. Right, we're going to move back into the UK with this story. So we spoke about last week, the back end of the week, I think it was, when the UK Supreme Court ruled that a woman is now an adult biological female. I think we knew that for centuries past, but we just lost our way for a few years there in the early noughties. But apparently we know again. Anyway, since then, the virtue signalling parties on the, I say the left, but even that's blurry lines these days.
Yeah, over there somewhere.
The Green Party have obviously very predictably come out and called for this thing to be withdrawn. They've come and called out that it doesn't protect trans people, 0.2% of the population versus, say, 50% of the population in women being protected. They're less important though than 0.2. Anyway, Carla Denyer, who is possibly the wokest person in the world, has been on the mainstream media in the UK calling for the guidance on single-sex places, so female bathrooms to only allow females in, that's adult biological females in, needs to be scrapped because how's it going to be policed? That's one argument. So are they going to have bouncers on the outside of doors of the toilet stopping men going in? Well, you'd like to think that people would be respectful and that wouldn't happen.
Yeah, but you also don't have bouncers on to stop men going in now.
No, you don't. It's just But then the only question on this story, which I understand slightly what she's asking, is it going to be made illegal? So if you're a man in a women's toilet and you're caught in there, what happens to you? That is a question that she's asking, which is probably quite a legitimate question, to be fair, because you should be prosecuted. That should be illegal.
Well, I'm pretty sure that there is something in place to stop that.
It's blurry, though, to say the least, in terms of what would actually happen. It's very much, there's a ban outside, a ban on men going into women's toilets. That's what the law is, essentially. And there's like an interim law at the moment until a new one is passed that deals with that. So at the moment, it's a bit of a grey area. But basically, she's come out and said that it's wrong to judge women on biological sex, even though that's the only way you can judge.
What are you talking about?
Which is just, very much expected from these kind of parties. But the reason this is important is because another story, which kind of goes along with it, is the NHS this week have said that they're going to test all children who appear into their clinics showing symptoms of things like gender dysphoria for autism. Now, that is a story that's only come out about a few hours ago. Now, I'm expecting this to get enormous backlash today. It was posted in the middle of the night on the Daily Mail. But I bet this will get enormous backlash today from the virtue signalers that will say this is outrageous, this is discrimination, this is this, that, and the other. But the reason they've done this is because following the Cass report, the Baroness Cass report, into gender identity and the way the NHS had been handling it, which was an absolute shambles and disgusting, and that report led to the closing of the infamous now Tavistock Clinic in London, which we made a documentary about called No Turning Back, which you can watch for free on the channel, which just goes, it's so disgusting what happened in that clinic and how many young children were manipulated and had their lives completely destroyed irreversibly. But anyway, following on from that, she said that the reason that this has been done is because that children with autism have been found to have a significantly higher chance of showing gender dysphoria. And people that have shown gender dysphoria, there's an extremely high percentage of people that are autistic compared to what you would expect, given the average in the population. So there's clearly something there on both sides to ask some more questions about. So the NHS are apparently going to start asking questions and doing autism tests with anyone that shows any signs of gender dysphoria or starts to ask any questions about their gender and so on, which I think you can look at and say, actually, that makes some sense because it's potentially protecting people who are vulnerable. What do you think?
Well, it depends what they do with the information in terms
true. And what drugs they offer as a result.
Well, exactly, of what the next step is. I mean, for me, this whole kind of... Dad said it for years. If something comes out of nowhere, suddenly it's everywhere, then there's an agenda behind it. It's not organic. And of course, you go back 10 years and talk about the idea of a woman having a penis, you'd be put in a padded cell. Whereas now, people are openly arguing about it on Question Time. It's come from nowhere. Suddenly it's everywhere. You've got social contagion. You've got the fact that it's being pushed all over television, all over social media, in schools where, kids are getting kicked out for saying there's two genders and all this kind of stuff. It's sort of become everywhere. Now, there's another aspect to it which you can go deeper into in terms of transhumanism and the idea of the genderless human and of, Aldous Huxley's Brave New World and all this kind of stuff. Also, you're getting an incredible amount of kids on drugs, on puberty blockers, causing infertility, which again is part of a depopulation agenda. There's all that kind of stuff. But there's also the other aspect, which is it's about pitting the population against each other. You confuse kids, like I say, that's definitely part of it. But also you've got people arguing against each other all the time. So now it becomes the trans community versus the X, Y, and Z community, this community versus this community. You can apply it to every single demographic in the UK, whether it be Christians v Muslims, whatever. There's a way that they are trying to manipulate a war of a race war, a class war, a gender war, whatever. And the thing I think to always remember is the fact that they don't care about the demographics that they're apparently promoting. So you can have a Labour, for instance, politician who's promoting Islam and all that sort of stuff, and you've got the native population kicking off about it and saying, well, they put Muslims above Christians, all that sort of stuff. Well, you can think that on one level, but at the same time, they're providing reconnaissance to the Israelis while they massacre Muslims. So they don't really care about Muslims at all. They care about creating the division. And they don't care about trans kids. Now, as Jay mentioned, No Turning Back, in that documentary, you've got detransitioners within that documentary speaking out. They were manipulated, they were gaslit, they were vulnerable, they were put on puberty blockers, they had body parts removed, and when they then tried to basically speak out about what they'd gone through to try and protect other children, they're attacked and marginalized far more than me or you would be for speaking out. You can apply the same to Jewish people that speak out against Israel. They get far more vitriol than non-Jewish people, because it creates a problem. If a Jewish person is calling out Israel, suddenly people go, well, hang on, they can't be anti-Semitic. And obviously when a detransitioner calls out the gender lunacy of gender ideology, then you can't call them a transphobe because they're trans.
No, you can't.
So they're a bigger problem.
They tend to lie as well. Obviously, they lie about the statistics. So one of the key things they use to slam people is the suicide rates of people who are showing gender dysphoria, who are showing themselves as trans. What they don't do is talk about the change or increase or decrease in the suicide rates post-surgery, post-puberty blockers, post-cross-sex hormones. Now, if those statistics were in their favour, they'd be shouting them from the rooftops. Yeah. The reason they don't talk about them is because the rates actually don't change. They don't change at all. You end up in a position where people have had body parts chopped off and they have irreversibly changed their life and they can't do anything about it. So there's loads of different angles you could look at it. The transhumanism agenda, the end of natural procreation, infertility is one. Another is creating a customer for life, because these people are going to be on drugs for the rest of their lives. They're going to have so many health issues through their lives as a result. It's creating one against the other, 100%. And one thing that's interesting, someone said this to me the other day. I said the word too early. A gay friend of mine was telling me about this, right? And he was saying about when LGB was LGB, lesbian, gay, bisexual, they're all sexual preferences. They're sexual ideologies, X, Y, and Z. T, that's added on the end, and essentially that dominates it now. That's an identity. They're actually very different things. And how LGBT does not reflect the vast majority of the gay community because of the way it's behaving when it comes to things like this. And you're right when you say that detransitioners are the first shouted at. Well, anyone that is gay that doesn't follow this, and we both know people that are like that, they get shouted and abused more than anyone else, because the last thing they want is people from within what they consider their side pointing out, actually, this isn't right here.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah.
Speaking of sides, it's okay when we do it. We know where we're going with this one, don't we, ladies and gentlemen? Trump DOJ, so Department of Justice, ordered ICE to invade homes without search warrant. Sounds like something you'd be against. The Justice Department quietly invoked the Alien Enemies Act last month to give immigration and customs enforcement agents the power to conduct warrantless searches of people's homes as long as they suspect them of being an alien enemy. USA Today obtained the memo that contained the order on Friday. Now, it will be massively celebrated, of course, by the Trump supporters, because, one, it's okay when we do it, but two, when you want to get something through, as the Trump regime is, they want to do it with as little pushback as possible. So what they need is they don't care about if they're getting a bit of pushback off the leftists, those Dems and all that. They don't care about that, as long as they've got support from their side, basically. So from the MAGA lot, and also just from conservatives in general. So if they want to put something in place, they need to package it in a little bow and a bit of a ribbon that you will agree with. Now, like any law that's passed, the excuse is not the reason for it. So if they want to pass a legislation where basically it means that state agents can just go into your house without a warrant, that's going to be a tough one to sell to you. That's going to be pretty tough. You're going to be going, well, hang on a minute, I've got rights. My house is my castle. Not a chance, mate. So you go, oh, no, we're only putting it in place so it's illegal aliens, it's immigration. Because you're against immigration, aren't you? You're against... I am against immigration. Yes, I am. Okay, do it then. Fine. Okay, so then when it comes into place, it then doesn't just apply to illegal aliens. It applies to anyone that's considered an enemy of the state. And that can change at any moment, depending. Because, and I've said this a million times, slightly exaggerating, I've said it quite a lot, that no one aligns with the state 100% of the time. They don't. And so you can be on side now with Trump, and so you're winning. And you can apply the same here to the sort of more woke lot. You can be on side now with Starmer and Labour because you feel like you're winning. Well, actually, in the end, there will be something that comes along, not too far down the road, that you disagree vehemently with the state on. And at that point, the legislation that you cheered when it was against your so-called enemies will be then turned on you. And you'll go, there were people warning you about that, and you called them grifters and blackpilled and all that sort of stuff.
Well, that was a Ricky Gervais comment, wasn't it, in his show, which is by cheering someone being cancelled today, all you're ensuring is one day you'll be cancelled.
100%. And this is the thing, again, we say it every single day probably on Trending. There's things that the Trump regime is doing that if Harrison Biden did, you would be going George W. bonkers. And rightly so. If Harrison Biden wrote in not passed through the House or anything like that, there's an executive order, and I'll just pass that through there as a bit of advice. The state can essentially enter your house without a warrant. You'd be going mental.
Yeah, and the amount of time so far in the last few weeks they've overruled the judiciary, the Supreme Court, they've overruled everything. They're completely silent, Congress. Congress you don't even hear about. During the first Trump presidency, you heard a lot of Congress mentioned in terms of pushing back, shutting down the government, all that. And they're all too terrified. They're all too terrified now.
Well, they're arresting judges.
Yeah, they are arresting judges for doing their jobs.
And people are cheering it on.
Yeah, it's completely insane. It's completely insane. When you say there as well, the key word in that executive order is suspect. Because you can suspect anything. I could say I suspect that someone upstairs is up to no good. Well, do I have to prove that? No, I have to suspect it, and then I can go and see if it's true or not. That's just disgusting. You could break into anything and claim that you suspected something. It's absolutely insane, and it's so vague on purpose. And I have no doubt they will be attacking a few enemies of the state.
Of course they will. Well, it's the same as the Labour Party. They passed the legislation where they can essentially go into your bank account to take money out without a warrant if they suspect you've committed benefit fraud. Again, it's that suspect. Oh, so you've not got to go and prove it.
No.
You've not got to get a warrant from a judge who's looked at the case and gone, yeah, he's banged to rights. There's a warrant. Go in and take it back. You just do it anyway.
Yeah.
And it's that. Oh, mate, it's madness.
This is fascism. It is fascism on completely open display.
But winning.
Oh yeah, exactly. Well, this is the final story today, and this is very, very predictable. It's only something to touch on. So this is a story here from the BBC. Baby food pouches, which you can get in pretty much every shop, and it's what makes up a lot of kids' diets these days, particularly as they're weaning. Baby food pouches are very low in nutrition testing finds. Well, that's about as predictable as the story you've just read. Baby food pouches from 6 of the UK's leading brands are failing to meet key nutritional needs of babies and toddlers, with parents saying they're being misled by their marketing. You do surprise me. Laboratory testing of around 18 pouches made by Ella's Kitchen, which I believe claims to be organic.
They do, yeah.
Piccolo, which definitely claims to be organic. Little Freddy, which also claims to be organic, and then Heinz, Aldi and Lidl own ones, are found to be low in vitamin C and low in iron, while some contain more sugar in a single pouch than a 1-year-old should have in a day. Well, there's so much to unpack here, but these are available, like I say, pretty much in every supermarket. They make up a large proportion of kids' diets, I would suggest, these days. And they're chucked into the lunch boxes that go to school. They're easy, quick food people give to stop having to cook themselves. So it's a convenience food. It's a fast food, which is how it's marketed. It's marketed as, no washing up, very simple for parents, nice and easy to digest, contains everything the kids need. It's organic, don't you know? When it's just, well, not even just false advertising. For me, that's not false advertising, that's fraud. Because you're claiming something that isn't true and you know it's not true, which you would have had to have tested all your products before you can put them on the market anyway. You would know when you're saying something provides everything that you need, you know that's not true. You know that's a lie. And you see it so many times through the food industry, left, right and centre. You see things like Huel, a nutritionally complete meal, 100% of what you need. No, it's not. It's complete crap. But anyway, this is very important when it comes to kids, because this period when kids start to wean, when they start to have solids, your immune system, your digestive system, your gut health, gut biome, all those things are developing for the very first time. What you do in those initial days, weeks, months and years is so important for laying the foundations for what then follows. It's so important. And the fact that they're obviously having kids on a very, very high sugar diet, which is, as you know, Gaz, one of the biggest changes in the modern diet compared to our sort of ancient ancestral diets, is the amount of sugar on a daily basis that people take in. Because people think, I don't have a lot of sugar. I don't have sweets, don't have chocolate. Okay, but you probably have a slice of toast in the morning. Do you know what sugar's in a loaf of bread now? a slice of bread now. Do you know what sugar's added into things like peanut butter, breakfast cereals, so many of the things that people eat on a daily basis, your sauces that people chuck on their pastas and so on. So much sugar. And sugar really is like crack for the brain. And particularly with a child, it's so negative. And the fact that these have more than you would have in a day, when this would be considered the healthy treat. It wouldn't even be considered a treat, would it? So you add on to that probably some chocolate, probably some sweets, probably whatever. The amount of sugar kids are taking in on a daily basis now is extraordinary.
Well, they get around it with the language in terms of their defense that they're not lying. Is when they will say, and you see this a lot, they'll say, it contains all the nutrients needed when taken as part of a varied and balanced diet. So what you're saying there is the varied and balanced diet is what's providing the nutrients. This isn't, but you get all the nutrients if you have it in combined. Oh, I like what you've done there. It's about the language, and that's why these companies employ marketing companies on astronomical fees because of that ability to manipulate people. It's completely predictable. Sick kids become medicated kids. Of course, they then become sick and medicated adults, which are a customer for life. On a financial level, obviously, there's an investment in having a sick population. But also, if you want to go deeper, a healthy, motivated, happy, well-aligned child and therefore adult is terrifying to the state.
Yeah, completely terrifying.
It's terrifying to the state. What isn't terrifying to the state is a fat, sick, depressed, unmotivated, miserable adult. I understand why people use these pouches. I get it because, especially, if one of you's now off, because life is so expensive now. So if you've got two parents and one baby, and one parent is off working all the hours God sends and some more to try and just bloody break even. And so the mother generally is at home with the child, juggling, trying to sort everything out, and the kids crying and they're probably bloody exhausted. They're not getting enough sleep. The idea of then cooking a meal, putting it in the blender, mushing it down and all that kind of stuff, and then feeding and doing all the washing up and all that sort of stuff, in comparison to here's an organic pouch, this is probably going to be just as good, if not better, than what you were going to cook yourself. There's no washing up, there's no cooking, there's no nothing. Think of that time. Oh mate, I'll do that. And that's where they get you. Convenience is always
complete manipulation. Convenience is the enemy, to be honest, because
of course it is.
That's how they sell convenience. They sell it everything as it's a lot easier. It's going to be more convenient on a micro level like this, and on a massive level like 15-minute cities. It's convenient. It's so much easier for you.
They're already selling digital IDs as convenience.
They're just trying to help you. That's all they do. They care about you. They're just trying to help you.
They love you.
But we've reached a point now where psychologically, I think when it comes to food in general, but particularly with food with kids, it's so far removed from reality where if you send your kids to school, let's say, with a bunch of vegetable, bunch of fruit, home cooked stuff, boiled eggs, whatever, really nice, healthy, organic, whole foods, where the food is what it is, you can see what it actually is. You've not got to read a list of ingredients. You'd be the weird kid. You'd be the odd parent, but you get sent with, your pack of Jammy Dodgers, your this, your pack of crisps. You're the normal kid, and you're the normal parent. It's just so far removed from reality of what's true. As I've said it on Health Code loads of times when I was doing that podcast, that if you have to read the ingredients, then it's not food, really. It shouldn't have a list of ingredients, to be honest. You should be able to see what it is from what it looks like, especially if you're giving it to your kids. Yeah,
but it's one of those non-surprising stories, isn't it, really?
There seems to be a trend.
Yeah.
They're all quite predictable these days, aren't they?
Well, they are if you know what the end goal is, which is, like I said, an easily controlled, easily malleable, psychologically weak, physically weak population. That's what you want, isn't it?
It's been motivating for a Monday morning for everyone, guys.
But, at the same time, as much as you can look at it like that, at least the story's out there now. So for hopefully every parent reading that goes, all right, well, I ain't going to go buy Ella's Kitchen's shite anymore. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. Cool. Well, that's a good thing. You've just helped your kid out. Amazing.
Yeah,
well done, Daily Mail. Was it Daily Mail?
BBC,
ironically. Oh, God almighty.
Actually.
Well done, BBC, for once. Credit where it's due.
Yeah, fair enough. Well
Very
done, guys.
rarely. Still, take that paedophile statue down, crying out loud. That's us.
It is, mate.
Yes, thank you so much for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. As always, Trending was brought to you in association with Iconic Coffee. If you head over to shop.iconic.com and use the code TRENDING, you get 10% off. I'll be back tomorrow on my own, won't I, Jay?
You will, and I'll be back Wednesday on my own.
Yes, we'll see you then. Take care. Bye. You can say bye?
Bye.